at the time of this recording, we are, you're just coming from practice. So I really appreciate this because God knows what your day has been like. But I'm going to start by asking you a question that I am asking every guest who appears on Spolitics, which is, who was the athlete that made you fall in love with sports?
Oh, wow. First of all, thank you for having me. It is such an honor. And, we always love sharing space with fellow game changers, fellow disruptors. And so you all
Oh,
done us so well.
well, th-
Uh,
that's a big compliment. I will receive it and take it. So thank
you
you.
know what?
Now answer the question.
Answer the question. Answer the question. Man, who made me fall in love with sports? I probably have to honestly say Kevin Garnett. I think that when I first started playing basketball specifically, my parents and my family, we were learning about the sport. We were all novices. And so we didn't know much about it. We didn't know where it could take us. And our gateway was, of course, the Houston Rockets. And then through that, we became Detroit Pistons fans and then Celtics fans. And like Kevin Garnett was always just my favorite player to watch.
Wait. I got to back you up a second. Being from Detroit, you said y'all became Pistons fans?
Yeah, we love the way the
Tell me about
We
that.
love the way the Pistons played, and my dad would always kind of use them as an example of how to be aggressive and how to be kind of unapologetic about like your strengths. So we loved watching Rasheed Wallace, Ben Wallace, Tayshaun Prince. Like we grew up as a family watching them very much. We were first and foremost Rockets fans because we grew up watching Tracy McGrady, Steve Francis, Yao Ming, Shane Battier, and so like we just loved watching the sport and how different teams played the sport. And so the Pistons were one of our teams.
As someone who was born, as they say, in the 1900s, it is, in a way, it's very sobering for me to hear that your early recollections of the Pistons are the 2004 team that won the title. I was like, ooh, with me, it was the team that won, it was Isaiah Joe Dumars. And even with the Rockets, Hakeem Olajuwon is my favorite center of all time. I mean, again, I want people to focus on favorite. Like I know some people are going to say Shaq or Kareem as they should, but he was the center I enjoyed the most, watching play. So when you said Tracy McGrady and Yao Ming, I was like, ooh, she didn't say Hakeem because that wouldn't have been her era.
We knew of him, but I didn't get to watch
Yeah.
him growing up much.
Oh God, I'm old. I am a relic.
Even
Well, Nneka, as you know, this is a very serious time right now politically in our country with everything that is happening. You, the mantle of leadership for More Than a Vote, which is an organization that was started by LeBron and a collection of players, including some of your fellow WNBA players, including, I believe, Skylar Diggins Smith. He started More Than a Vote as like a voting advocacy organization. And I know it's an organization you've been involved with as well, but now you will be assuming the mantle of leadership of More Than a Vote. Tell me a little bit about how that came about.
yeah, I mean, like as we all experienced in 2020, there was more that we wanted to do, and when LeBron came out and got a collection of athletes to you know to have a call for action for justice and change after the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others. I don't feel like it was settled in our spirit to not do anything, especially as women in the W who are playing in that bubble. We wanted to do whatever we could, and so I was just grateful to be a part of a group of players that were looking to use their platforms to raise awareness, engagement, resources for us to be able to change what we experience, what is our lived experience every day. And from there, it's just kind of been a major alignment for me. We have a lot of experience with help from you as women in the W, using our platforms to stand for things that are bigger than what we represent. But also understanding the responsibility of what it means to be a professional athlete. Everyone loves to say, shut up and dribble. And to that, I say, I wish we could, but we can't. And I think WNBA players are athletes that really understand what it means to stand for something and to do something about it with the platforms that we have. And I'm just grateful to have been a part of the initial group to, More Than a Vote to make that type of change. But also, I'm all about sustainable change. And to be here again in 2024, doing what I can to continue that change, especially with the headline of reproductive freedoms as a woman who uses her body for her career. It really means a lot to me.
Now, I realize that 2020, in many ways, it was an unforgettable year because of the murders that you cited of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, so many others. There was a very intense energy in the athlete community, especially in the Black athlete community then, especially in terms of getting involved in politics and social issues. Now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels like in 2024, while I wouldn't expect it to match 2020, I probably was expecting it to be a little higher in 2024. There's been a bit of a dip off. Would you say that that's a fair observation?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that what felt heightened in 2020 was the fact that we were in the middle of a pandemic. Everyone was at home. We were playing in a bubble. It was unique that we were in a situation in a season where all of the players were in one place at one time. And here we are post pandemic. Well, not really, but
Right.
post that
on paper, so to
on
speak.
paper, it's happening. But post that kind of isolated, insulated time, we're now reintegrating into the world and kind of trying to figure out how best we can still maintain that level of engagement and energy and awareness while still being in not just active seasons, but I mean, the visibility and engagement that we're experiencing today is not what we had experienced in 2020, let alone a few months ago. And so understanding where that lands, and then also kind of the conversation around our lived experiences with injustices on Black and brown people, on women, and so many different marginalized groups, how that now is woven into the cultural conversation of sports, while we're still trying to see what we can do to manage our daily lives, what it means for us to be Black women in sport, what it means for those on the outside giving their own opinions about that, and then still showing up in our communities and making a difference as civilians and as citizens of the communities that we represent, both in market and as just people.
Now, I know that you're through in your career has shown this, like you're the type of player that's going to be sort of engaged in these issues regardless. But what does it mean for you, if anything, to have Kamala Harris being at the top of the Democratic ticket and be, the nominee, the person running for president?
For me, I think that there's been so many question marks around our leadership in this country. And one thing about Black women is that we find a way to make sure that we're on the right side of history. And for me, I don't think that I've ever lived through a potential president that has been this qualified. It has I don't want to say it has nothing to do, but the priority for me isn't always about the demographics. Granted, it's difficult for us to ignore that because we live in all the intersections as Black women, especially Black women in sport. But I just feel like it's incredibly symbolic of what we always say is that we have to work twice as hard to get half as far. I feel like we're living that in real time. And to be able to look at someone that I can see myself in, that not only represents an illustrious career to get to a point where she is incredibly qualified to do this job, but for me to also look at my own career and think about all of the work that we do individually and where we are at the points in our careers and our lives, and using that as a way of being just it's incredibly relatable in so many different ways. It's incredibly relatable, and still working through the muck to get to where you deserve to be, to get to where you've worked to be. But then all of that, of course, I personally think that being a Black woman, being a woman who went to an HBCU, being a woman who's a prosecutor. I think that there's so many different intersections that I can appreciate. I am also a child of immigrants. Like, there's just so much that I can see in myself in someone who is incredibly qualified and who could potentially be our president.
Now, so much to follow up on what you said, but I'll start with this. Have you had much personal interaction with the vice president?
Not personal interaction, but I will say, and I mean, everyone saw that she came to our game last year.
She did.
That was my first time ever meeting the vice president, and she came into our locker room. It was a celebration because it was BG's first game back after being wrongfully detained, and for her to show up in that moment, it just represents the way that Black women show up for each other in times where we need that support. And I'm just grateful to have been able to meet her at all, but especially in that capacity, on behalf of BG and her coming back to us.
Now, I'm sure you've seen a lot of the political, rhetoric. A lot has been about immigrants. You're the child of immigrants. And there seems to be a very conscious demonization of immigrants. So how have you processed hearing from the other presidential candidate in Donald Trump, how often he summons, immigrants and uses them, politically, and especially as a tool of division and dehumanizing and demonization as a child of immigrants? How does that land with you?
I mean, I was raised. My parents raised me to believe that there's no one that can say anything about me that I'm going to believe. Especially if they don't know me. I think that there's tactics, like you said, there's tools, there's ways to divide groups, to divide people. Finding differences and using that against people is something that I am familiar with as being a child of immigrants. Granted, it may not have been a part of the conversation, a part of the cultural conversation as much as it is now, but I grew up with kids in school making different types of jokes around, what are you eating for lunch? That smells weird. Why do you guys wear that? And it's nothing that I'm unfamiliar with, but it's quite unfortunate that people can use differences to cause more divide. I think that our country was certainly built on people being from different places, unwillingly and also by choice, but mostly unwillingly. And it is very sad to see today that with the contributions of those people that were not originally here, that have made a life and that have driven culture and have driven the success of this country to not be respected and supported in a way that we need for us to continue to make our country as strong as we all know it to be. And I have living experience through my parents who have built lives for themselves and ultimately for us to be able to do what we do and represent ourselves proudly. There doesn't go a day where you don't hear that Chine talks about being Nigerian. And that's something that was embedded in our household. It's something that makes us Nigerian. It's something that makes us American. And those are things that I think are represented well through the Harris Walls campaign, is that she really talks about or appreciates where she's come from, how she was raised, and how that makes her who she is as an American today.
Now, I believe you are serving your third term as president of the Players Association.
Yes.
Big title. Now, when you first were, elected to that position, did you imagine doing it three times? Did you imagine you would be a three-time president?
I did not imagine doing it once. But here we are, and I'm very grateful. I run unopposed three times, but I'm seeing now, quite possibly, maybe through the other elected positions in our EC, that it's becoming more competitive. I think that there's people that are wanting to be a part of this leadership. I'm excited to see that happen also when it comes to people wanting to possibly be president of the PA. It wasn't always a job that people wanted, but I think that our previous presidents did an amazing job of, ensuring that the role was respected by the person that held that position, and then ultimately that it grew. And you know, maybe I'll run again. Maybe I'll run
Okay.
again. I'm grateful to be a part of a group of women that want to lead these players in this union towards great and big change.
Now, recently, as I'm sure you saw, the WNBA commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, she was on CNBC, and she was asked about the Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark rivalry that has sort of dominated the headlines of this WNBA season, and how there's a bit of I think I'm being generous by calling it a bit, but there is a negative undercurrent because of the racial and gender dynamics that have been brought into the discussion. Real quick, for the people listening, I'm going to play what she said, and then I want you to respond.
Let's go to that question, which raises some sensitivities of rivalries between players. In the case of Angel Reese, who's just had to shut it down because of a wrist injury, Caitlin Clark, who's continuing to play. Rivalry that goes back to their college days, presumably, where I guess some trash talking entered in. But now it seems on some social media channels to have taken a darker turn, a more menacing turn, where race has been introduced into the conversation, where sexuality is sometimes introduced into the conversation. How do you try and stay ahead of that, try and tamp it down, or act as a league when two of your most visible players are involved, not personally, it would seem, but their fan bases are involved in saying some very uncharitable things about the other?
Well, the one thing that's great about the league right now, we do sit at this intersection of culture and sport and fashion and music. Like, the WNBA players are really looked at now as kind of cultural icons.
True.
And when you have that, you have a lot of attention on you. There's no more apathy. Everybody cares. It is a little that Bird Magic moment, if you recall, from 1979, when those two rookies came in from a big college rivalry, one white, one black. And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another. So the social media is different today than it was in 1979 when it didn't exist. But, I always tell the players, I was told a long time ago, if someone's typing something in and you wouldn't ask their advice, ignore it. So it's a balance, but certainly from a marketing dollars, but corporate partners are stepping up to endorse these players much more so than they were 5 years ago, because they see the benefit of having women and diverse women representing their brand.
So how do you feel about what Kathy Engelbert said on CNBC?
I think that, to be honest, it felt like a lob that could have been a slam dunk, and I thought that it was missed, and it's disappointing to hear that response to a question about a league that stands for everything that has to do with equality and equity and denouncing racism and bigotry and homophobia and sexism. I think that we want to be able to feel like we have a commissioner, someone who is leading this league that represents us and our values and our lived experiences. Now, I will say, though, that, her lived experiences are not my lived experiences. And I am what looks like over 80% of this league. And so it's very important for us to develop relationship where there are gaps in our lived experiences to help us represent ourselves and these players the way that we want to be and the way that we know that we should be. I don't think I need to make this clear, but I will make this clear. There's no rivalry and racism in our league. That's not something that we stand for. It exists, and there's agendas that are pushed because of the intense following of these rookies that have come into this league. There have been undercurrents of this that we've experienced in the WNBA, whether it's through branding and marketing and selecting certain players. It's something that I've experienced, it's something that players have talked to me about experiencing. And quite frankly, there is no business in bigotry when it comes to the WNBA. You know, we've had players who have had to shut down their accounts. We have had players who have had death threats. And we now have a player who liked a post and is now seeing, or maybe not even now seeing, but now we are now all publicly witnessing the agenda that was trying to be pushed by the backing of a very talented rookie who herself has even had to publicly denounce the just the vile behavior and the vile engagement of players and specifically Black women who are experiencing a lot of these racist acts and these sexist acts that are just being driven behind what seems to be support of certain players. And so one thing that I really don't like about all of this is that I feel as though Black women a lot of times have to clean up messes that they didn't make. And I think that players should not have to be the ones to solve the problems of something that needs to be either the league's issue or a collaborative effort from whether it's the players, the union, and the league. And I think we're going to reintroduce discussions that I know that we are already having on the Players Association side. That started with a conversation with Kathy. I had a conversation with Kathy. She was apologetic. She knows she missed the ball. She wants to move forward and she doesn't want this to happen again. As Black women, we know anything can kind of happen, but we're always here and we're always ready to open the door for collaborative efforts. But I do think that, as I expressed in 2020 to the players and to individuals in the league and the PA, that it can't always fall on the players to have to deal with issues or fix these types of issues.
And of course, you were referring to Aaliyah Boston, who is Caitlin Clark's teammate, who had to basically get off social media because early in the season they got off to a rough start. And her teammates took the blame for that. And so she was subjected to a lot of these attacks, as is any player seemingly who guards Caitlin Clark is subjected to a number of attacks. And of course, referring to Caitlin Clark liking a post by Taylor Swift endorsing Kamala Harris. And suddenly that has gotten her out of favor with people who I think most of us who have watched the league and follow the league knew this. And it was always an elephant in the room that there were some people who were trying to disguise their fandom of her, but really they hate Black women more than they love her or the WNBA. And they were sort of using her as their bat signal to kind of get out some feelings that we knew that they harbored, whether Caitlin Clark existed or not. Nothing that is, of course, been encouraged by her on any front. But with that being said, is that you mentioned several times in our conversation how the WNBA, everybody knows what it stands for in terms of how the players are politically and socially engaged. That's just in the fabric and the DNA of the players. A third of the players in the league are identify as LGBTQ+. You have a league that is almost 80% of Black women. With that being the case, as the popularity of the WNBA is ascending to a different level, how concerned are you that the league will still maintain that DNA of activism, of speaking out and outspokenness as more people get invested in what this league is?
Sure. To be honest, I've never really felt concerned about that, only because I know our players. I know the players are not going to just fall for anything. And I think that as long as that's not recognized collectively and from the league, then incidents like this week are just going to continue to happen. And ultimately, that's not something that looks good. That's not something that feels good. That's not something that fosters an environment where players really want to be represented and represent themselves. So I can only believe that we have to move forward from this. I know that the players always do. I know that the players are always going to speak up. I know that the union is always going to represent our best interests. And I have faith that the league will too. And I think that you have to experience instances like Kathy's interview and the response from that interview and the response from the players for us to really look and reflect and think about, hey, this is what needs to move forward. And concerning ourselves with league investment when it comes to standing on top of our values is going to be an issue, because if we're worried about the dollars, then the integrity of this league, it can fall just as fast as it got built. I'm very strong. I'm an advocate for the sustainability and the integrity of what you stand on. And we got here, we got through 2016, we got through 2020 to be in 2024. And I think that that's the only way that we can continue to move forward. And the right people are going to be the right people that'll stand with us.
Being that you seem to kind of have a penchant for being president of the Players Association, have you thought about a career or ever thought about a career in politics?
Oh man, my family, my family they ask me this all the time, especially as someone who, someone who's from Houston. For a lot of people feel like we could have a different type of senator. And so,
I mean, y'all need one. You can. I'm gonna say it for you. You might not be able to say it, but the state of Texas absolutely needs a different senator.
Yeah. We're slowly. I mean, if we're not purple, we are lilac. We are sweet. And so that's something that I haven't really thought about it. And it's something that has certainly been entertained in conversation amongst friends and family. But I'll ask you this, actually. I understand politics. I understand that in industries that we exist in, there are politics there too, And I wonder, I guess maybe it's because I've just been in sport for so long. Don't you feel like we have more power with the platforms that exist in the intersections and the politics that are revealed within those intersections? Like, how do you feel about that? I personally feel like I do, but I haven't dabbled fully into the the actual politics of things.
That's a great question, and it's crazy because I'm forever encouraging everybody else to run, because I do believe in sort of something that Toni Morrison said that applies to everything. Which she said, write the book that you want to read, that you don't see, right? And so because of the complaints that we often hear at the grassroots level about the politicians, I always say, like, be the candidate that you want to win, right? Like, be the candidate that you want to see. And so I would say the same to you, is that, I mean, I know the political landscape is very tricky. It is, it's difficult in a lot of respects, but if we do want to see this system sort of change, somebody like Nneka might need to be in office.
I feel you.
You got some good experience going already, so that's why I asked you that question. And I'm not surprised that your family has asked you the same question, because maybe they see it too.
Yeah. I don't close doors. I don't close doors.
You're not going to rule it out.
I won't rule it out. But I will say, though, no matter what, I need a few more rings, and then maybe I'll send it back to you.
Yeah, I'm not trying to retire you right now, that's for sure. But because you have so much more left to accomplish. Speaking of basketball, I know that you have had your understandable issues with Team USA, but what were your thoughts on the fact that the Nigerian women's basketball team, they reached the quarterfinals? I think they're the first African team to do so. Like, how did you feel witnessing that in the Summer Olympics?
It felt great. I wasn't surprised, and I think that it was a little bit serendipitous that they, that they played. I don't know, like, they just played so hard, and they played the hardest competition. Like, I just feel as though it felt good being Nigerian and American. Like that, that's really the only way that I can describe it. I think that it just shows that the best parts of me are at the top. I felt very, very, very represented. And so I look forward to seeing how much more can be done. I look forward to seeing if I can be on Team Nigeria in 2028. That would be in LA.
Ooh, okay. Put it out there. Listen, for those who are listening, unfortunately, there is a statistic that you have that I feel like is such a it is such a disservice to your career. But I think you're the only WNBA MVP to have never made Team USA. What is it like for you watching Team USA in the Olympics, knowing that you've had a very, let's use the word political kind of experience with them? But what's it like for you to watch Team USA?
I mean, those are my teammates, those are my competitors. I think that I've always had respect and I continue to always have respect. I mean, I would be lying to you if I told you that I felt peace, like
Yeah, right.
definitely I don't feel peace. And I think that it's maybe less about watching Team USA and more about the process. I played for Team USA for 15 years. You know, I did all the things. I was told all the things, and I was trusting. And I think that it's just it's unfortunate that I feel as though my experience is incredibly symbolic of the tools of divisions that we're experiencing from um, campaigns that want to profit off of division. And I think that my experience can resonate with a lot of different people who come to places for opportunity and do the right thing and are disciplined and try to be good and are not only not rewarded but are disrespected. And so for me, I couldn't sacrifice my integrity and continue on. I had to keep that, and I went against a lot of close family and friends advice to try again. It didn't rest well. It didn't rest well. To me, it didn't feel good to continue to try again. And so I'm forging my own path.
Yeah, when Caitlin Clark wasn't selected, obviously that caused a lot of conversation, a lot of controversy, and I said, I was like, I get why people feel emotional and passionate about it. I was like, but if we're talking snubs, the biggest snub by far is Nneka Ogwumike, and it was interesting to hear Arike talk about why she withdrew her name out of the process. And to me, if you have players who are feeling this way, then you might need to evaluate your process. As you've seen, Nneka, like there's been an explosion of coverage for the WNBA this season, the sensational rookie class. But if you had to give the media a grade for how you felt they've covered the WNBA this season, what would it be?
This is an excellent question.
And by the way, this was not the controversial question.
Oh, what?
No, it wasn't this one. No, I got an even more controversial one coming.
Okay. Oh, a grade. Wow.
Yes, I mean you are a basketball player and a scholar, so I know you understand grades.
Sorry, I just had a text message. Let me silence that. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay, all good.
A grade. Okay. So I've been in the league. This is my 13th season. I've been through many failing grades. Many failing grades.
I know some years the media has definitely gotten an F.
Many failing grades. I wouldn't give media a failing grade this year. I wouldn't give them a failing grade.
I can give you would you like me to make it pass fail? Or is that too binary?
That's tough.
That would be too binary.
That's too binary for me.
Okay, all right.
Failing grade. So I feel like there's a lot of variables that come into the grade that I would probably give like a solid C. I would probably give a solid C only because I think that when it comes to media, there was a lot of work that wasn't done before we got to this moment that is only serving as an exacerbation of problems. I think that there's a lot of enabling that continues to occur because of problems that weren't addressed before. And like, from my experience, what I would say is representation in stories, representation in media. When it comes to who is telling the stories, who is pitching the stories, who is asking for the stories, who are the stories about. There's not enough diversity in a lot of those categories. I was a part of actually a media summit last year, or actually at the top of this year, where we talked a lot to beat writers, media in the WNBA, and players and relationships with the media, especially with our changing media rules when it comes to coming into the locker room and such. I know that a lot of people were up in arms about that. I think that media coming into the locker room is as traditional as white jerseys being the traditional color for women who all menstruate.
You're right, exactly.
Those are just things that people are like, oh, we never questioned it. It's always just kind of been a thing. And so now when we come with new ideas and innovative ways to protect players, but also still ensure that media can do their jobs, it's jolting. People are not used to it. And so I give it a C because for so long it's been like, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Well, now we're here. Do we want this to continue to just be the way it is? Do we have Jemele Hills asking questions and being able to tell the stories that they want to tell? Do we have big three shows that are representing these women in ways that they feel like, okay, even if this is a hot take on me and my team, it's an informed take. These are people that have a lot of history of watching these sports, knowing these women, and looking like a majority of what this league looks like to tell these stories and talk about these sports. And I feel as though we still have a ways to go to even get to an A, a B, and I look forward to seeing how that changes. But the powers that be, are the one, like the people who are in charge of making these decisions. That's what really needs to change with the media.
Yeah, it's been uncomfortable to watch, as a media member, because one of the bigger observations I've certainly, kind of put out there was, and I'm gonna keep it real, it's like a lot of men who are now chiming in and talking about the W. I'm not saying that you have to know the history from, soup to nuts. I'm not saying that, but there is some institutional knowledge you should know. Right. And what amazes me is that men are allowed in the space of women's sports, and it's not just the W, but I think it's particularly prevalent in the W, to show up and say, I don't know anything about this, but here's my opinion. Mm-hmm. And that opinion is being regarded as gospel. And there is not a woman I could not show up on anybody's NFL set and say, oh, that Patrick Mahomes guy seems kind of good, huh? I couldn't do that. And yet when I watch sometimes the commentary about the W, it's people who don't know anything about the league, and they are loud and proud of the fact that they don't know anything, and yet their opinions are taken very seriously. And so I'm hoping that the media will take this year to actually grow up a little bit, because it's not on the players. It's the media is responsible for the coverage and the conversation and the narratives that are said. And so it's been a little disheartening to watch that take place. So this will lead to a question. As somebody who is, sort of in that space, I know you don't want to get into the business of necessarily, sort of ripping the media, but what are your hopes going forward? Because now that the popularity is there, the coverage is increasing, are you hopeful going forward that the media will be more grown up in how they cover the W?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know how grim it can feel, as someone who is watching all of these takes, and I mean, people picking up a mic for the first time now, talking talking so much about a league and sports and athletes that we have been so passionate about. Like, we would do it without even anyone paying us to talk about or play, or and so I can feel the tension when it comes to all of these new hot takes. But I do feel hopeful, because maybe I have a different vantage point from the inside. For so long, it's always been easy to point out like who's doing what wrong. And so I think in a year where we are just, exploding with attention and media, my radar is like, no, okay. And so I'm able to sift it out a little bit easier and without emotion, because for so long, people have been getting it wrong. And I'm able to, and a lot of other players are able to appreciate the gist, just women's sports, the big three, Jamel Hill. Like, we're able to really appreciate that, and also see that there is investment for those who are institutional at this point, like you said, in knowing things about the W, because without investment in the big three, where the hell would we really be watching people covering women's sports? Like, being able, and of course I'm biased because my sister is a part of the big three, but being able to see them work and just be in their bag in that way, because of the
Yeah.
boom in women's sports and the engagement and the feedback that they get, it comes hand in hand with the Stephen A's and the Shannon Sharps and people who are honestly having their gateway into it. Because for me, like, I'm not here to criticize anyone. I will tell you, like, hey, do your research, like, before you start talking. It's cool to read up on something or watch a few games, go and look at some WNBA classics, But I think that the loud and wrongness of the media now is an opportunity for someone who is credentialed like you to be like, no. You have community of people with large platforms in the same way that Monica McNutt did what she did. I feel like these are now opportunities for us to, instead of fight and combat like the fans are in the comment section, you can have people who are credentialed, you can have people who are respected in the WNBA, speaking to people who aren't necessarily informed on the WNBA, but do have the platform and are credentialed and respected in their own rights, to bring these communities together and be like, hey, it's okay if you didn't know. I'm here to help you out, And so that's kind of, and granted, I may be someone who generally Candace would always tell me that, like, you always see the good in things. And like, I may be someone who leans, she's a little bit more pragmatic, but I may be someone who leans to be a little bit more optimistic, but I think that there's ways that you can still be firm and still let people know and read them without it turning into, an all-out war or fight. But then sometimes you do need to get a little bit messy. And so that's what I anticipate. I anticipate people being able to have a little bit more gall and say, like, hey, no, like, I've been doing this. Let me let you know you're not right, but let's move forward and educate ourselves about it together.
And so, as you brought up in this conversation, you've been in the league now 13 years, which, I mean, I knew you've been in for a while, but it still feels like it still feels like it hasn't been that long. But I'd like to know, how much thought have you given to how much longer you want to play?
Yeah, well, I mean, I would say that, you make plans and you think that things are going to go a certain way. I will be honest, I did not anticipate playing in another franchise. I'm very grateful that I'm here. I have resources that make me feel like I'm looking at a longer runway now, whether it's with facility and ownership engagement, and just being able to feel as though I still feel like I can be out there doing things, and I know that I have resources and staff and support that can help me do those things for much longer. My aspirations to play in the Olympics, I think, is something that is probably also extending my career as well. And so I can't tell you how long, but I can tell you that I have goals, and to be an Olympian is one, and to be a A multi-champion is one, and it takes a couple years to get those things done. So we'll see where that lands me, but I'm very happy with still trying to achieve those goals.
And this is still not the controversial question. Who is your rookie of the year?
Ooh, today? Yeah.
Yes, today.
Today,
As of
rookie of the
today.
year is Caitlin.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
I would
right.
say, though, before the break, it was Angel. Yeah. Before the break, it was Angel. One thing, there was a stat that someone read me the other day that said that, because, there's also conversations around discrediting Angel and her double doubles because of her field goal percentage.
They're saying they're saying she's just getting her own rebounds,
Yeah.
which that's been debunked by the analytics, by the
Yeah.
way, quite a
So
bit.
that analytic, that was remarkable to me.
Yeah.
Was that she
Yeah, when they
would still
said
be at the top.
she would still be at the top even if you did not count her misses,
Right.
right?
And that's
Yeah, no.
something. To me, that is something. I mean, the two of them, I expressed this, maybe I had more time with Angel at the draft, and I briefly expressed it to Caitlin. Our league depends on you guys doing well. It really does. Our league depends on you guys doing well. We saw what happened in college. We see the energy around the Kiki Rices, the Paige Beckers, the Jujus. I think that we have to recognize real. And this narrative that the vets are jealous is not true. But that's what it turns into when people start looking at women involved in anything. At the end of the day, there's no league that any vet is going to be like, come on, rookies, like let's
Let me make it easy for you. Just
give you,
come in here and take my job.
yes, let's hold you in our bosom. Like, no, that doesn't happen anywhere. But like you said, the disguise of the agendas behind people following these rookies is being revealed to those who may not have seen it, and it was more apparent to those who understand it. But that does not take away from their talent. That doesn't take away from what is so obvious as them bolstering this league, but based on the foundation that was built of those who came before them. And we can all look forward knowing that all of that is why we are here and where we are today. And I'm excited to be playing. I never thought that I'd be flying on a charter plane. Like I never thought that I would be, and I was okay. Not okay, but like I was at peace knowing that wasn't gonna be.
But that was something you all had been fighting for years. Like it wasn't new that you had been in this fight.
Right.
Yeah.
There's just so much that's happening, and we live in cancel culture. We live in people just wanting to argue for argument's sake. But we can acknowledge when we're wrong. We can acknowledge when we're right. We can acknowledge when we know. We can acknowledge when we don't know. And I think that the WNBA today is a perfect example of all of those things, while still understanding that this thing can be great and that we all have a hand in it, and respecting the process of it all.
Your sister Jemele recently got married. What was your favorite moment or memory from her wedding?
Ooh.
And were you her maid of honor?
I was.
Okay, all right. So you had to give the speech.
I did. Well, there was so much happening that we almost didn't do our speeches, but we made it.
You made it? Okay, all righty.
My favorite part of the wedding. So we have a Nigerian culture. We have a traditional wedding. It's called the Imanku. And we had to rehearse a dance to enter the hall as a part of the ceremonies when it comes to what we call the wine carrying. And so I would say that when we entered the hall and we were doing our rehearsed dance, that was probably my favorite part of the wedding. There's video, there's clips, there's highlights. You can watch it for sure.
Now here comes the controversy.
Man.
As we want. Yes, now here comes the controversy.
I've been good so far though.
You've been excellent, but I feel like I haven't really put you on the hot seat. But this, I'm hoping, will do the trick. Make the case for why Nigerian jollof rice is better than Ghanaian jollof rice.
Wait.
Make the case.
Wait, why do I have to make the case?
Look. The streets say it's a dead on battle. I've had them both. It's hard for me to. I have had them both.
What makes it hard?
Yeah. You know, I mean, I have to say, I am kind of leaning towards Ghana. I'm not.
Whoa!
I hate to say it. I'm leaning towards Ghana. Now, I felt like, you see, Ghana tricked me just because I was in Ghana when I had the rice, right?
Okay.
So, like,
fair enough.
Okay, I was in Ghana when I had the Nigerian rice that I've had has been in the States, but made by real Nigerians. Okay, so yes, all right. So like, but having it in Ghana, I was able to sample a lot of the rice, and so I feel and because it feels a little spicier to me, and I'm a spicy person.
Wow.
Then it does like. But again, that's why I said, like, let's start beefing these streets. Why is Nigerian jollof rice better than jollof rice from Ghana?
Because it is. What is true does.
You said because it is.
What is true does not need to be explained.
Oh, my bad. You hear that, Ghana? You hear that? You got 24 hours to respond.
We are great.
All right. Can you make jollof rice, Nneka?
I can. It's not the best thing that I can make. I think the best thing that I can make is egusi soup. Yeah.
Now, I ain't gonna lie, on the soups, I think Nigeria wins. On the soup.
Wait, which ones have you had?
So I've had I'll tell you the ones I had from Ghana. Like I've had, I think it was pepper soup.
Pepper soup.
That's
okay.
it.
Yeah.
Yes, pepper soup was really good.
You
But
like spice.
What'd you say?
You really do like spice. If you had pepper,
I do. I love spice. Like that is kind of my thing. And so from Nigeria, I believe I had I've had fufu for sure.
Okay.
Which is great. And love fufu. Like a big fan. I've had, I think it's called, is it egusi soup?
Yes,
egusi soup, very good. Agbono soup.
Oh, you got agbono soup too?
Yes, I've had agbono soup.
You have really tried it all.
Man, listen, I'm a foodie. Like,
I love that.
Look, adventurous food, hate to see me coming. Trust me, especially spicy food. Absolutely, I'm gonna be all in. But I feel like I would give the edge between the two countries. I would give Nigeria the edge when it comes to soup. And I know now all the Ghana people gonna come for me, but it's okay. But don't even trip. But definitely on the rice thing, like y'all go hard for the rice. It's like,
really do.
Wow.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Though, they did have the jollof wars, and Nigeria didn't win, so.
Oh.
Yeah. It's fine.
So who makes the jollof rice the best in your family?
Oh, my mom.
Your mom?
Yeah.
Okay.
My mom for sure.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Now you got to get that recipe, or not get the recipe, but you got to perfect it, right? Because you got to pass this on, man.
No, you're right. You're right. I need to practice making it more to really perfect it.
Right. Mm-hmm. Like, right. I mean, it meant everything to me. Like last Thanksgiving, my mother gave me she begrudgingly, but yet gleefully also to some degree, she handed me the mantle. She was like, your dressing and your mac and cheese is officially better than mine. I was like, I made it. I made
a moment. Wow.
That was a moment. I was like, I got here. I was like, all my life I had to fight. I was like, I got it.
Congratulations.
I got it. I was like, I can put it down for sure. So I'm just saying, that's why you got to make sure you perfect it. And part of it is that you have to make it more than once or twice a year.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. All right. I'm putting you on there. See, look, you escaped that controversy. You talked your shit, which was good because now all of Ghana. Yes, you have to. Now, when Ghana ride into your mentions, I can't wait because they take that rice very seriously.
I'm telling you, we don't play.
You don't play. Well, Nneka, I want to thank you for joining me on Spolitics and for taking some time out. And good luck in the playoffs. And 2028, we want to see it. We want to see you in a country's Olympic uniform. Perhaps Nigeria's. I mean, they made the quarterfinals before.
Hey.
What could they do if they had Nneka on the team? I'm just saying, you know what I mean?
Thank you.
But thank you so much for joining me. And good luck going forward, and look forward to your political career as well.
I appreciate that.